What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at FakePigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's going on, Kyle? I'm excited to get this next round of NASCAR playoffs going here, as we've seen a bunch of great races, and hopefully these last few are, they kind of match up to the level of racing we've seen.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Obviously, the final eight has a lot of the well-known drivers, as well as our boy Alex Bowman, who's really trying to make his impression on the sport and kind of elevate into that next tier, which we thought maybe he could do this season. So far, so good. We are talking the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Motor Speedway this week. Once again, as a little reminder, if you are enjoying what we're doing, if you like our content, please mash that thumbs up. Please subscribe. And in the comments, let us know, how you've enjoyed this NASCAR season with us. Obviously, this is a new thing for us, so we are looking kind of, not only as something to do this year, but potentially going forward. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, if you're enjoying the content, please let us know in the comments. It really does do a lot. And if you have any suggestions on stuff you'd like to see next season, let us know. Obviously, we can do like a preview and kind of figure out who are some of our favorite long-term bets are, guys that we're going to be watching, that kind of stuff. But as well as week to week, like if there's something that you like and enjoy, or something we're not doing that you think would benefit both viewers and us, let us know down in those comments. But without further ado, Brian, let's dive in. Let's do what we always do. Let's start inside that top 10. I think this week for me, especially, it's very much a stay relatively inside the top 10, especially when it comes to outrights. Kansas seems to be a top-heavy, elite driver kind of course, and obviously in the heart of the playoffs, where guys are trying to lock in that championship. I think the names are that obviously going to be running at the front, staying at the front, and barring any issues, should be finishing in the conversation. So let's start with your favorite guy inside the top 10. Talk to me about Kevin Harvick, who is currently, per DraftKings Sportsbook, listed at 4-1 this week.
Yeah, if you look at the odds, you see both him and Denny Hamlin, who kind of dominated the series this season, right out there with the same odds at 4-1. And the reason why I'm looking at Harvick is he doesn't have the most consistent success at this track. He does have a victory here in 2018. He's got 3 top 10s over in the last 5 here, and he finished 4th here this year. But I think my main reason for looking at him going into this race is he's currently first into the playoff standings, just holding off Denny Hamlin, who is co-favorite, because he's also has multiple victories here at Kansas over the last 5 races. And Kevin Harvick, he's coming off of a 3-race streak that hasn't seen him place any higher than 10th. And the last time he did that this year, the next race at Pocono, he won. So I'm expecting the same kind of run from him this weekend at a track that he's had decent success at, and a track that he finished top 5 in this year, trying to hold on to that number 1 spot in the standings for the playoffs.
Yeah. I think it's a great call on your part. Obviously, Harvick's a guy that's felt like a favorite or co-favorite to win the whole championship basically since the restart. So if he won this and kind of locked up that first seed as we approach the final 4, and then obviously the championship, that wouldn't shock me in the least. There's 2 other names inside this range that I'm really looking at, and like I mentioned, I want to try and stay in this range if I'm looking at in terms of true outrights. The first guy is Martin Truex Jr. This is obviously a guy that has kind of had an up and down. Obviously looked really good post restart, kind of faded a little bit. Now seems to be finding his form again. When they ran this race back in July, finished 3rd. Has had a top 6 finish in 6 of his last 7 races. 3rd and 6th in his last 2. Obviously an impressive run since switching from the Chevy to Toyota. And even with Joe Gibbs, when he made the switch to Joe Gibbs Racing, a 3rd and a 6th in his last 2 finishes starts here. a guy that I think makes a ton of sense that seems to have a comfort at this track, runs really well on this type of track, and at plus 550, don't love the odds, but it does, if we're looking at kind of where he sits with everyone else, it makes a lot of sense. The other guy I really like is Chase Elliott. I feel like Chase Elliott is a guy who's just been running really well. I think obviously has a run of success, finished 12th in July, but before that, first, fourth, and second in the 3 races prior. Has a clear comfort level at this track. I think is another guy that, while younger than kind of that Harvick, Truex, even Hamlin group, is in that elite company and priced at 6-1. I feel like I'm getting just as good a value as Harvick and Hamlin, a guy who's had success, and I'm getting a little bit better of a price. So for me, those 2 guys make a ton of sense. Like I said, I don't want to venture too far down the board with everybody, but for this week, for this track, this is a very top heavy race. So those 2 guys really, really stand out. As we always do, Brian, we have to go deeper. We have to dive. We have to find value. Maybe not outrights, but top 10s, top 5s, that kind of stuff. So let's start with a guy that popped up for both of us, and that's Erik Jones. I mean, if you've been listening, if you've been rocking with us since the beginning of the season, you know our love for Erik Jones, our appreciation for what he's done this season, despite not really knowing where he's going to be driving next year. Has been just rocking and rolling. Obviously, not in the final 8. But a guy that has had a ton of success at this track, 5th in his last race back in July, 7th, 3rd, 4th, 7th is his recent results. All things you like to see. And at 30-1, like, I feel like we're getting a hell of a price on a guy that has had success, that has run well, and granted, maybe not being in the final 8, it goes into it a little bit, but I still feel like we're finding a ton of value on a guy that I think could be in that top 3, top 5 type conversation.
Yeah, I think Erik Jones for me is he's been one of my favorite drivers all season, as you talked about, but going into the playoffs with him not advancing, and we keep talking about this, but the fact that this dude doesn't have a ride next year, he is really driving for his livelihood, and he has shown it over these last 6 races. He has 5 top 10s, 4 top 5s, 2 top 3s and 3 top 3s and a second place finish. Like, he is probably the hottest driver on the circuit right now. And he's coming into a track where, like you talked about, he hasn't finished outside the top 10 in each of the last 5 races here. And, this is like as good a chance as any for him to steal a win at a track where he dominates. So I love that at 30-1. That this is one of those long shots that you could put a few extra dollars on just in case.
Sure.
But
throw a few shekels on that outright. You can get him right now at 7-1 for a top 3 and 3.5-1 for a top 5. And those numbers, like when we're talking about Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick at 4, just to win the race, it feels like a lot of value.
Well, and then even he's even money to finish in the top 10, something he's done for 5 straight races. To me, that's like as good a bet as any there is.
Yeah. Sometimes those 30-1 numbers, as sexy as they are, they're where they're priced for a reason. But if you can find value like a top 10 where he just has to, and he's starting, I think 11th. So like he's right there already. So, I mean, it feels like a very reasonable, safe bet, as safe as a bet can be. Let's talk about your favorite guy at the 30-1 range. Another podcast favorite, Mr. Aric Almirola. Talk to me about him and kind of your expectations also at 30-1 this week.
Yeah, he's another guy who I think the reason why he's valued where he is because, over the last half of the season, he's kind of faltered a little bit after that streak of amazing, like top 5s that he had, where it was something like 5 of 6 or 6 in a row. At this track, 4 of his last 5 have been in the top 12. He has a 6th place finish here this season. He'll be starting 16th, so pretty much in the middle of the pack. So in terms of value for like DFS lineups, he's going to offer great upside there. He's, like I said, the last couple of races during the playoffs, hasn't been running very well, hasn't been finishing. But all these drivers, regardless of it, whether or not they're in the playoff chase or not, they have something to prove heading into the next season. And at a track that he's had good success at finishing near or inside the top 10, he's another good bet at even money and as a top 10, or even going a little bit higher odds at like the 3.5 or 4-1 to finish in the top 5.
Yeah, and the one thing I do like about this is with the adjusted NASCAR schedule, some of the races have been at different times of the year, so the track conditions are a little different, and it's not as easy to basically comp their performances. But this is a mid-October race. This track is usually ran in mid-October. So looking at kind of how they've done on this track during that time, it is a great comparison tool and a good kind of point to measure their recent form and whatnot against. Let's dive a little deeper. You got one more name for the people. If we're digging deep, talk to me about Tyler Reddick and 50-1.
Yeah, I love these guys that are these super long shots. Last week it was Chris Boucher, who, he wound up finishing near his starting position, but he was inside the top 10 for a period of time. And this week it's Tyler Reddick. Looking at his history here at Kansas, whether it's the Xfinity Series or in the Cup Series, his 2 races here in the Cup Series have been 9th and 13th place finishes. In the Xfinity Series, he's finished top 5 each of the last 3 times he raced there in 17, 18, and 19, with a second in 17, fifth in 18, and a second in 19. And then if you're looking at what he's done so far in this 2020 season and go into these last few races of the playoffs, 4 of the last 5 races, he's finished in the top 12. He's got a 7th and a 4th place finish over the last couple races. Like, this is a guy at a 50-1 odd that you're going to be looking at as a potential top 10 bet, or in DFS lineups for good value. Like you said, that this race has been run around the same time of year every single time. So when looking at history, you're looking at good numbers to kind of try to prognosticate where these guys are going to run at. And Tyler Reddick, to me, stands out like a sore thumb as somebody who offers great value at the books.
Yeah, he's plus 135 for a top 10, which is definitely tempting. I'd also look to some matchups for him too. Like I could see him being an underdog in a few matchups against relatively similar drivers, and I would be happy to line up to take him. Brian, let's do what we always do before we get out of here. Let's hit everyone with our best bets for Kansas for the Hollywood Casino 400. If you had to go with your best bet, who's it going to be? Who we backing this week?
Well, I'm not going to get as crazy as I did last week with Party Marty, but I'm going to go this week with Eric Almirola, top 5 at 3.5-1, and a get right spot for a dude who, he needs to show that he is the same guy that we saw earlier in the season, who just raced as one of the best drivers on the circuit.
Yep. I'm going to do a very similar route. I'm going to take the other Eric Jones. The top 10 is obviously, if you want the safest bet. But for my best bet, I'm going to look at that top 5. I think he can crack it once again. And, 3.5-1. I think if you bet both the Erics to finish top 5 at 3.5-1, if either of them hit, you're going to be making money.
I think the last time we picked both of these guys as our best bets, it worked out pretty in our favor. So
you never know. Although maybe that means it's going to kind of balance out, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But yeah, so enjoy NASCAR on Sunday. It is an earlier race, so be ready for that. I think it's like a 3:30 instead of like 4:30. Either way, make sure you check the calendar. Make sure you check that out. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.